Hey guys, welcome back to Faith in 5 Minutes. My name's Brian, and this is a time that we get to spend looking at God's Word and growing in our walk with Jesus together. Now, on Wednesday, we talked about Noah and the ark, and we talked about how God used Noah as a part of his plan to save and redeem the world that he loved. And we talked about how that correlates to our role in God's kingdom because he calls us to be a part of his plan to save and redeem that same world through Jesus and through the cross. And what I want us to recognize is how much of an honor that really is. Because after all, the sovereign God of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, calls you and me to be a part of his plan to draw other people into a relationship with him. I mean, how cool is that, right? That we get to be a part of something so amazing. And we see this not just experientially through the Old Testament, through the Gospels, and through the writings of the early disciples of Jesus, but we see that through the words of Jesus himself. We see that through a parable that he told in Matthew 22. In Matthew 22, Jesus shares this parable of a king that threw this amazing wedding feast for his son. In Matthew 22, verses 1 through 4, it says this, "And again, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, 'The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son, and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent other servants, saying, "Tell those who are invited, 'See, I have prepared my dinner. My ox and my fatted calf has been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast.'" Now, in this parable, we find out that the people that were invited chose not to attend. And what's more is they mistreated the king's servants that went to share the good news with them. And because of that, Jesus says that the king had another plan. Jesus says this in Matthew 22, verses 8 and 9. "Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go, therefore, to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find.'" So what Jesus says is that the people that were invited weren't worthy. They rejected the king's offer, and because they rejected the king's offer, the king decided to just invite everybody. So he instructed the servants to invite everyone that they could find into the wedding feast. Now, if you're a little bit familiar with Jesus's culture and context, you might already know what this is describing. See, Jesus is using this parable to tell the story of humanity, of how God calls people into relationship with himself. And in the beginning, he called a very specific group of people. Those people came from the nation of Israel. And so when Jesus comes on the scene, he goes to the Jews first and he invites them into this relationship with God through what he's going to do on the cross. But they reject the offer. They're much like the people that were invited to the wedding feast initially, but rejected the king's offer. And so God has his servants go and invite everybody in. Now, the distinction here is that everybody's invited, but not everybody's going to accept the invitation. There's more to that parable that we don't have time to unpack right here, but God invites everybody into this relationship with him. And if we're a follower of Jesus, we are like the servants that we see in the parable. And because we're like the servants, we are the ones that get to go and invite everybody in. And it's such a great honor that we have to be a part of the message of grace that God has for everyone through Jesus. And the question we have to answer is, are we going to accept the honor that God has called us to, or are we just gonna continue to live the comfortable lives, just kind of minding our own business? I mean, I know when I was initially called into ministry, I wasn't necessarily thrilled with the idea that it would be my job to proclaim the gospel, because I knew that there were people that are hostile to the gospel, but I also knew the honor that it was that God called me into this particular work. And he's called you into a particular work too. And so I hope that you're willing to recognize that and you're willing to accept what God has called you into specifically. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation about God's grace and how he puts it on display when we look at the life of Abraham during our weekly Bible study tomorrow. You can find us on our YouTube channel at around 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, or if you want to hang out with us live, be sure to tune in to our Instagram page at 6:30 tomorrow evening to catch the service there. We can't wait to see you tomorrow. Until then, guys, have a great day. Bye.